Okay, so Tears of the Kingdom is out, and it's great. There's so many elements of this game that are an absolute joy. The new crafting system is excellent. The Zonai devices, such a fun idea. So much fun. I love building the 9 Zonite air bike. Like, genuinely, such a fun idea. Didn't expect it. I feel like this system, all the new Zonai devices, took such a precedent over the elements that I was hoping Nintendo would like reinforce and take even further that they introduced in Breath of the Wild. Like, what was the biggest part about Breath of the Wild was the exploration. It was so much fun to explore this brand new Hyrule. Like, the moment you discover Zora's domain, that was incredible. Heck, the moment you walk out of the cave for the first time was absolutely nuts. And the music kicks in, and there's this big, like, sweeping landscape overview of this brand new world, and you get that feeling that you got from playing, like, Ocarina of Time for the first time, where you're in the Kokiri Forest and you see this, like, ring cloud above Death Mountain in the distance, and later in the game you realize, oh my god, I can just go there. That feeling was, like, so present in Breath of the Wild. It was the primary driving force of that game. I mean, there were so many things in Breath of the Wild to just discover. Like, you're just wandering around, you see this giant mountain in the distance, you see some weird bluish, reddish light at the top, and this, you slowly progress, you know, managing your stamina very carefully, trying not to slip around in the snow, and just, you know, slowly scaling this, like, Lanayru mountain, and then you find this, like, freaking massive dragon up there who's possessed, covered in this Ganon demon gunk. Super cool, incredible moment. Boss fight, awesome freaking boss fight with that dragon in Breath of the Wild. So many things like that in Breath of the Wild where I think to myself, playing that game for the first time, wow, Nintendo really understands what I want out of a Zelda game. I want to discover things. I want to feel like I'm finding something interesting. I understand this critique that Breath of the Wild had too many repeated enemies and a few repeated bosses, obviously, in the overworld, but I really felt like that game captured this magic of just exploring, running around, finding new awesome stuff. All right, so I classify that Zelda specifically, Breath of the Wild, as a land exploration Zelda. You're exploring land for the most part. You can barely swim in the water. You can't go under the water. There's really not much to do in the sky, and you wouldn't even think about doing stuff in the sky until, obviously, Nintendo announces the sequel to Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom, and they specifically show off these sky islands. And I start thinking to myself, oh my gosh, Nintendo is just trying this again. They did Skyward Sword. Everybody hated it. Not myself, but most critics at the time. Well, I guess to be fair, critics at the time were like, this is great. And then, like, within a year, I remember the vibe shifting of people saying that motion control Zelda is not the way to go, and there's so much limitation, and the whole overworld is a dungeon, so there's no break from the dungeon, so everything's a dungeon, and it just got frustrating for people. The point of this all is that Skyward Sword was a Sky Zelda. Breath of the Wild, they got back to their roots of, like, regular land Zelda, and then Fujibayashi and Aonuma and all these guys were like, you know what? We just made one of, if not the best Zelda games of all time, and we really want to try this Sky idea again. So let's go back to Sky Zelda and try to do it with the Breath of the Wild style. Now, when they made this Sky Zelda, I feel like they got distracted. I feel like somewhere along this route to making Tears of the Kingdom, somebody, like, showed Aonuma a TikTok of some dude in Breath of the Wild, like, making an Octorok balloon raft. And that guy that came up to Aonuma was like, dude, look at this. Like, somebody used our physics engine in Breath of the Wild to, like, craft things together that we didn't even specifically intend to do. Like, obviously they know that Octo Balloon is in the game and that you can attach it to things and that it floats, but I'm guessing that people at Nintendo were like, oh my goodness, we kind of stumbled into something. Like, obviously in Breath of the Wild, you could chop down a tree, break the log, get the wood. So that's a piece of wood you have in your inventory, and then like break a rock, get some flint, put it in your inventory, and then throw those two elements on the ground. You could throw down the wood, you could throw down the flint, and then smack it with your sword, and you've crafted a fireplace, and then you can like sleep by it to, pass time. That's a very basic, simple, kind of fun crafting moment in Breath of the Wild. But like that, plus the Octo Rock thing, there's all these like hints of Nintendo saying, hey, maybe instead of doubling down on what made Breath of the Wild cool with the stamina and with the like climbing, with the paraglider, let's focus on that like crafting, but in a mobility way, specifically because some guy showed Aonuma a video and was like, look how popular this got on the internet because it's such a weird, interesting, cool thing you can do in Breath of the Wild. The problem in Breath of the Wild, if that's their end goal, for people to make cool, interesting stuff with this weird physics system and share it on social media, the problem is that it was difficult to do, because it wasn't intended to be done in Breath of the Wild necessarily. Like, people were sort of circumventing the actual use cases for those objects to like make weird stuff with them that like you're never supposed to. There's no moment in Breath of the Wild where Aonuma is expecting you to understand that you need like 20 octo balloons. So you have to go like farm octo balloons from some lake or something. And then you go into a shrine and you have to like throw octo balloons on a raft to like repeatedly, like throw 4 octo balloons on a raft. It pulls you up. They pop immediately. So you have to just have the like speed of movement with your hands on the controller to like smack down 4 more octo. I mean, it's hard to do in Breath of the Wild. You're not supposed to do that all the time. So they made that barrier to entry of crafting these physics motion things, they made it much lower in Tears of the Kingdom by having Ultra Hand to be this like glue thing and how you can just stick everything together. It's really cool, but somehow all of that became the focus rather than what I think made Breath of the Wild really cool, which was that exploration and that moment of going like, oh my gosh, I didn't know this game could do this. That what is it, Nadra, that dragon on the mountain, I think it's Lanayru. That moment is incredible. The moment when you like see there's a giant Transformer Shadow of the Colossus robot camel stomping around the desert, kicking up a huge, that's incredible. It's such a freaking cool moment. People whine about the divine beasts all the time, but when you see the iguana guy, like crawling around Death Mountain, that's so cool. And you arrive there and there's a whole way you have to fight each of the divine beasts in this epic, essentially boss battle against a humongous mech. That's so cool. And this isn't even mentioning, we have never seen this world before. So everything was so brand new in Tears of the Kingdom. In Breath of the Wild. Everything was so brand new. In Tears of the Kingdom, we get the same map. Not necessarily a huge problem. The problem, and so many people have talked about this, so I'm retreading some already discussed ground, but the point is to discuss the sky here, so I'm just going to set up a couple of things. The problem is the actual new content they added on top of the land. Obviously, there's new content, but the new content is like 2 biomes. Like in Breath of the Wild, there's so many biomes. There's the desert, there's the base like field for Hyrule Field, there's that Akala like fall region, there's the like this super dark area, that bog in the northwest before you get to the Hebra region, which is all snowy. There's brand new Rito village, Zora village, Lurelin village, Hateno, that was all brand new. There's so many things to discover. And then in Tears of the Kingdom, it's Depths area and it's like Yellow Tree Sky Land. Like, sure, that's appreciated, but for being literally the longest wait for a 3D Zelda, I just personally was a little shocked that they didn't care to like add more biomes and things that would have just been fun to discover. Like, the big point of all of this is that Nintendo marketed Tears of the Kingdom as Sky Zelda. And for those of us who like were around for the Skyward Sword era, which was a lot of like classic Zelda fans, this is Sky Zelda 2. This is Nintendo's second attempt at a Sky Zelda. What did they get wrong the first time? Personally, I think they got a number of things wrong. Like, Nintendo has done Zelda games before that didn't primarily take place on land. They've done 2 water Zeldas, both of which I think are good. Wind Waker puts all of the interesting content in the sea, naturally. Because if you're going to do Zelda, but in the water, you're going to put all the cool stuff in the water. You're not going to randomly put... It's like they did one area in Wind Waker that was like underneath the water in a bubble. But most of the stuff in that game, most of the cool stuff, like required you to travel across the water because it's water Zelda. Same thing with Phantom Hourglass. Why the heck did Nintendo not see that in Skyward Sword? Nintendo was like, no, let's have the sky in the Skyloft area just be nothing. It's just like a random, essentially world map where you select which of the whopping 3 holes you jump into to reach the literal world map of the land. And then it's Metroid Prime 3 style, pick your destination where you fall. It's like, I'm not saying it's super bad. It's just not, like for being, that was 2 Zeldas after Wind Waker, where they already got this whole idea right, where they already said, hey, let's not do Zelda on land. Let's do it in some other form of transportation. They got it right in Wind Waker, in my opinion. They just somehow goofed this up in Skyward. It's so strange to me. So if you accept that they goofed it up in Skyward Sword, whether you think so or not, I love Skyward Sword, but I personally think that they could have done this better. They could have brought the dungeons into the sky. I know they had 1.5 dungeons in the sky, but like if all of that content was in the sky and sky, I mean, imagine it's so frustrating. Imagine if Skyward Sword had all those dungeons in the sky somehow with separated massive land masses, and your bird has stamina, and you have to upgrade the bird's stamina along with your own stamina. I mean, this is what I thought they were going to do in Tears of the Kingdom. I thought that Aonuma, having tried Sky Zelda, having successfully made Breath of the Wild with the stamina mechanics, with this whole reinforced idea of, oh, exploration is everything, I thought that Aonuma would say, okay, well, we did this. We did exploration right, and we tried the sky. Now let's merge them. Let's do exploration right in the sky. Let's break up the landmass that is Breath of the Wild's Hyrule and just like send a humongous shattering crack through the center of Hyrule Castle. Hyrule Castle lifts way up into the sky. Death Mountain maybe is the one thing connected to the ground, so it can still spew out lava and stuff, but all the surrounding chunks of land, like the Hebra Mountains, like launch into the sky in an absolutely massive chunk of land, such that it's very high into the sky, and you can't reach it, just, I don't know, flying around with using reversus or whatever it's called, recall to reverse the rocks upward. Maybe you needed to increase the stamina of the Loft Wing in Tears of the Kingdom such that you could reach those islands. I mean, it's really strange that they don't see how huge chunks of land and having really all of the dungeons take place in the sky in some interesting way that takes advantage of them being in the sky. It's strange to me that they don't see that as something they should do. They see the sky, at least in Tears of the Kingdom, as just like, literally 10% of that game. I mean, I'm using this loosely, but in a lot of ways, it really is copy-pasted. They did small islands and they copy-pasted them. The Great Sky Island is awesome. Obviously, it's not quite as intuitive a microcosm for the whole experience of Tears of the Kingdom in the same way that the Great Plateau is for Breath of the Wild, but it's still really good. You still get to see all these new mechanics in a really fun way. You get to see a new biome, all these yellow trees and Zonai-style ruins. It's really cool. Why was there not more of that? Why was there not more of that? Why did massive temples not float down from the heavens just new content to explore in the sky, brand new, interesting biomes. I feel like Nintendo marketed this game to be Sky Zelda 2. And it's just not Sky Zelda 2. It's Zelda plus Minecraft that happens to take place a bit in the sky. Partially because a lot of these objects just allow you to float. So they went, oh, well, if these objects allow you to hover, we should probably put stuff in the sky, rather than them saying like, oh, the cool thing about Breath of the Wild was the exploration, and the cool thing about Skyward Sword was, the sky vibes. Let's merge the two. They didn't do that. I'm just surprised personally that they didn't do that. Now, I want to just give a couple of thoughts as to why I think this is something that they should try again. Personally, I think Tears of the Kingdom is great, and I think a lot of the systems they introduced are just excellent, but I think that they underdeveloped some of them in a way. Like, I think Ascend is such a cool ability. It's such a great idea. But I think that Tears of the Kingdom suffered from showing off all of these ideas over such a long period of time and then hyping everyone up as to how much these new ideas might shake up the experience. And everybody sort of had their expectations put in check when they played the game. Not everybody. I mean, like, some people are beyond blown away. I mean, I love the game still. It's still a fantastic Zelda. It's just not, it really isn't what I expected it to be at all. And part of me is disappointed by that. I love the game we got, but part of me is disappointed. I really think there's room for a third attempt at Sky Zelda where there essentially is no ground. Like, there's just nothing. Like, there's just clouds. And like, maybe you fall, like, the very base of the world would be clouds. And you're just, it's like a soupy fluff that you almost get stuck in, such that, you do hit a floor, but the floor is like that cloud barrier from Skyward Sword, except you get to see what happens when you hit it. You literally just stop. And then maybe you have to call for a Loftwing that like picks you out of it or something, or like the light of the goddess Helia pulls you out, or those Sky Loftian knights come and pick you up or something. Regardless, that would be the floor. And then the entire game actually takes place in the sky. I just don't know how that, like, Aonuma, if I'm thinking of this and I'm some random guy, how am I going to think that Aonuma hasn't thought of this? He just has to have. They just must have thought that the mechanics thing was more interesting than the Sky Zelda I'm describing. Okay, so you have a cloud floor. You have a littering of smaller sky islands throughout the massive world, which in my opinion maybe could be around the size of Breath of the Wild in terms of how, like, the XY scale of this map. Like, these land masses are split up by air, open air, yes, but they're like reasonably sized sky islands. And here's the kicker. I think some of those sky islands themselves can just be the shrines. Like, just axe the whole idea of the loading screen between the overworld and the shrine. Just get rid of it. Who needs this? It's like, are we to believe that Nintendo can make a game where you can jump from the literal peak of this world on like the top of some labyrinth that has really low gravity, where you can see essentially the entirety of the map of Breath of the Wild and all the sky islands across it? You can jump from that point all the way down to the ground with like new textures and like 3D models popping in and out into a pit, into a chasm, all the way into the depths in real time with only occasional hiccups of like the freeze where it has to load, only occasional hiccups. Are we to believe that that is possible, and yet Nintendo can't figure out a way? And literally you can walk into somebody's house without a loading screen. Are we to believe that all of that is possible, and yet Nintendo can't find a way to do the whole shrine idea without locking it behind a loading screen? Like, that really is one immersive element that Tears of the Kingdom is missing out on. I think they could capitalize on having some of those sky islands just be the shrines. Like, why not just put the puzzles out there? Maybe it's surrounded by a big bubble, and when you enter that bubble, you've entered the shrine, and the white, location text pops up on the screen, and it says, Matthew's shrine. I don't know. Like, it says, like, Zelda's shrine. It says, shrine of the goddess Helia, something like that. There's 120 sky islands just around that have a bubble surrounding them. That's, I don't know, something that indicates that's a shrine. Eliminate the loading screen, and then the most obvious thing, just put towns in the sky. Just put them up there. Like, why is Lurelin Village not... Okay, Lurelin Village is a sea village. Maybe that's a bad example. Why is Hateno not just floating in the sky? That's so much cooler. Why is Hateno Village not just lifted out of the ground and there's a huge chasm in the ground, or you just can't go to the ground? That'd be so cool. It's like Outset Island, in the sky. It's awesome. So I don't understand it. Those are just some of my ideas. Food for thought. I think that there is room for a Sky Zelda that does those things. We'll see if Nintendo ever gets there. I think it'd be awesome.